Hello, everyone. Welcome back to a brand new episode of the 13th Man Sports Podcast and Live Show. Hope you're all having a wonderful one and staying safe out there and excited for some sports. It's a very interesting week. Frankie's not here. He got caught up with work, but we are excited, and I'm excited to introduce our guest host for today. I'm hopefully not going to butcher up his name on live for the 100th time, but we have Neil Villapiano. Wow. See, Villapiano is in studio. He's the host of the Devil State podcast, covering the New Jersey Devils for the Hockey Podcast Network. If you haven't heard him, go check him out. He's fantastic. But hey, Neil, thank you for joining, coming on to replace Frankie for the day.
Yeah, no problem. It's actually a pleasure to be on here. I've started to get into the CFL. I've been able to watch it a couple times. Funny fact, actually, the first time I ever watched a CFL game was when Johnny Manziel was in Montreal a couple years back, and ESPN was like, oh, here's Johnny Manziel's first game in the CFL, and I was like, well, this is going to be fun, and I think he only lasted like one or two drives, and then that was pretty much it. But I appreciated, Shane, that you're still trying to pronounce my last name. I know it's tough, but it's Neil Villapiano, in case anybody would like to know.
See, here's the thing. We've talked off camera, and I've said it off camera. I've said it, literally, I was practicing it today. I'm like, hey, Neil Villapiano. But the minute I get on screen, it's like, nope, you don't know how to speak English. You're done.
That's how it works. There's always you can practice it 100 times, and then once the lights come on, it's all of a sudden like you just forget everything. But it's perfectly fine. You're not the first person to butcher it. I think our good friend Bayou from the old day, I think he butchered it the first couple times that we were doing episodes together. So you're not the first one.
Yeah, but he also butchered Tyler Seguin's name. I remember that greatly. It was such a frustrating.
Yeah, Seguin, I believe that was how he said it, or I forgot.
Yeah, I think so.
I forgot how he said it, but he tries his best.
A for effort, buddy. A for effort. But how much of the CFL do you know? Like, have you been following it through their charade with the XFL? Have you been following that kind of stuff?
I have. I remember when I first heard about the XFL was going to be doing some form of a partnership with the CFL, and I said, well, that's a good step for the XFL because it obviously gives them a little bit more credibility, especially with them coming back in, I believe, another year or two under Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, obviously being the new head of the XFL. But I'm not really sure exactly why it ended up going under with that with regards to their partnership. I'm sure, Shane, you probably know that better than I do, but I've known the CFL for quite some time. I remember seeing highlights of the days with guys like Doug Flutie, who's probably considered the greatest CFL player of all time, Warren Moon winning 5 Grey Cups, certainly one of the more dominant players there. And obviously they've had some other guys, and interestingly enough, there is one guy that I actually know, and it's Paxton Lynch, who's I think in Saskatoon, I want to say, at the moment. So it'll be interesting to see how he, the former first-round pick of Denver a couple of years ago, will be performing. But I definitely have been able to watch a couple of games here and there. I watch some highlights when I can, and I'm still trying to figure out what team I'm going to be a fan of. I've been asking people online, somebody give me a reason to be a fan of your team, and we'll go from there. So, but I think I know it enough, but I'm still learning more and more as every day goes along.
It's simple. You're a Red Blacks fan.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
Like, it's just simple.
Right. Okay, fair enough. That'll be what I'm sticking with. That's fair.
All right, there you go. Also, my bad for the echo. I don't know where it's coming from.
Sounds good on my end, but
apparently there's a bad echo happening.
Okay.
So I'm gonna quickly try fixing this. I had no idea.
All right. Well, this always happens. It always happens.
Hey, one episode a day. It always happens.
Yeah. I'm also pretty excited, obviously, that I heard that apparently the Canadian border will be opening up to people in the United States following, I think, early August. I want to say it was
August 7th.
August 7th, yeah. So I'm actually planning on making my first trip to Canada either in October or late November, early December. Going to stop in Toronto and maybe a couple other places while I'm there. And if I definitely have some time, I think I'm going to find a way to come see you in person so we could actually meet up.
Yeah, I mean that would be ideal.
That would be ideal. And I know the good guys at the Hockey Pod, Ish and Dylan, were already talking about, oh, you got to come over to Vancouver Islands, and I'm like, do you understand how far you are away from from where I am? I mean, it's the equivalent in a way of me being, on the other side where, I guess you would say probably California. I mean, it's about probably a little bit longer than that, but I'm definitely going to try to meet up with as many people as I can while I'm up there, and it'll be my first time in Canada, and that'll be something that I'm really looking forward to.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you come in October, there's definitely a couple of Red Blacks games that you'll have to hit up.
I'm definitely all for that. One of the things that my brother actually sent me, he sent me a video earlier today on Instagram of, I guess there was like a triple pass. I don't know if it was in a game recently or if it was in a game last year or a couple years ago, but he sent me a triple pass play from one of the games, and he was like, "Oh, you gotta talk about this." And I was like, I don't know if that has any reason to do with it. I'd have to look up again to see like what team it was, or like who was playing in it. But like he was like, you got to talk about this play, and it was weird. It's like I can't. I think it's, from what I'm seeing here, it looks like it's Montreal versus Toronto, and I don't know. That probably wasn't from this year. I would imagine that was probably from 2 years ago.
Probably. I mean, there was one incident where, in terms of the Argos and the Alouettes, and on a punt, that was interesting.
Yeah, the guy who caught the touchdown pass for Montreal last name is Bray. So that, I don't know.
Oh yeah, that was like 2 years ago. Juan Bray. He's back at practice now.
Oh, there you go. So I mean, that's pretty much how I was able to figure that out.
Yeah, he had his whole legal thing in the States.
Mm-hmm.
But he's back. He showed back up in Montreal's practice on I think last week.
Okay.
Or early this week.
And
there's my annoying cat.
And I was gonna say, and then we hear a cat. I also saw that apparently, yesterday, the Toronto Argos traded defensive back Alden Darby to the Winnipeg Bombers, I believe. So that was gonna. I don't know do you know what Winnipeg got in return for that, or?
I got an offensive lineman.
Oh, okay, so it was a 1-for-1 basically.
Yeah, basically. It was just a 1-for-1. They both addressed needs.
Right. That's a good point. That's a good point. And then obviously, either I might say his last name wrong, but former now Ticats center Mike Filer retired.
Yeah.
Filer retired for 9 years,
which is surprising because he signed a contract in the offseason, coming back, and I guess his body just couldn't do it.
Yeah, it's kind of a funny thing sometimes. You think that you're ready to go, and then once you actually get into the season, or like you start practicing and stuff, that's when you really start to realize, if that's the case.
Yeah, I mean, there's been a couple of them this year, and I'm expecting a lot of them as well, coming up in the next couple of weeks. But it's going to be interesting to see between now, because camp ends, I believe, on the 27th, because the first game is on the 5th. So I'm expecting a lot of retirements between now and then.
I think it's a fair point. I mean, it's just, like I said, it depends on, I guess you would say, how people are feeling moving forward. I don't see it as much in the NFL, with guys doing that, but I mean, it wouldn't be a surprising thing depending on, certain moves and everything like that. But the CFL is definitely an intriguing place to see, just to watch football in general. I think it's just another really good place for guys to go to continue to play. And obviously, especially if you're from the States, to go to a completely different country, different culture, everything like that. And then being able to, play football. And even though the rules are a little bit different, than what you see in college or high school or even in the NFL here in the United States, it's still very cool. And I think a lot more people are starting to get into it more than probably they did before.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of interest in that with the XFL thing starting. Um, but I'm not sure. I think me personally, I've been a CFL fan longer than I've been an NFL fan.
Hmm.
I find the NFL game boring. And it's not like the players or anything. It's just the on-field product isn't fun to watch sometimes. But I think with the CFL though is that this usually doesn't happen. Having players retire halfway through camp, but most of these players have been off for a year and a half, almost 2 years.
Hmm.
So they haven't been in that situation, and their bodies are like, yeah, I can't deal with it.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. One guy, because we're just talking about the CFL in general. One guy that I'm interested in watching again play this year is former Eastern Washington and Oregon Ducks quarterback Vernon Adams. I remember watching him in college, particularly at Eastern Washington, and obviously knowing what he's capable of performing. And I don't know exactly how he's done in the CFL, but he's certainly an intriguing type of player, considering that he still has a lot of mobility and he has a pretty solid arm as well. And I think that that's something that definitely Montreal can use to their liking in any way, shape, or form. So, I mean, he's definitely somebody that I'm definitely going to keep my eye on this upcoming year.
Yeah, he bounced around a couple of teams. I think he was drafted. He had BC had his rights. They traded him to like Montreal, and then he was traded to Hamilton. He was traded to I think Saskatchewan at one point, and
Mm,
then ended up back in like Hamilton and Montreal. He was the second string last year, and then Pipkin got hurt, and then he took over and has just um, kind of ran with it. So
right.
he's primed for a good season. Most of that offense is back together, so they should be a threat. We got a question here from Tyler. He heard that the CFL and the XFL are going to work together starting 2023. I have no idea. That's actually the first I've heard of it. Everything I've heard
Mm.
is that both parties are going their separate ways for now. Maybe changed. Maybe there's some back behind the scenes stuff that we don't know because NDAs are a hassle. Um, but I can't really confirm or deny those rumors.
I think it's I think it's definitely something that I wouldn't be surprised if the XFL came back and started talking in with the CFL because again, one of the issues talking about the XFL when it came back the first time a couple of years ago, one of the issues was just the fact that I think when you look at the quality of players that the XFL had, it was tough at times to really get to know these guys very well and obviously also to be able to give players another way of getting to getting attention and obviously moving from there. And I think if the XFL came back with somewhat of a partnership, um, I think honestly and truly it would be better. I think it would. I think that it would help. It would help legitimize the XFL. And because to me, when I look at the CFL, they don't really have to do this. I think that they're good on their own. They're good on promoting themselves pretty well. But obviously, partnering with a league in the United States could definitely help them because it might get them some more notice. And I mean, look, if there's a chance down the road that maybe they decide, oh, what if we have XFL teams playing CFL teams, it might be very intriguing, particularly to fans in the United States who are obviously into football. Anytime there's an opportunity to just see a football game, regardless of the league it is, a lot of people will tend to go. So I think that could be something that could definitely be a possibility. But again, there's probably a lot of logistics, and also we don't know where the XFL really stands because again, they were supposed to come back in 2022. That doesn't look like it's going to happen. Looks like it's going to be more 2023. So they do have a lot of time. But the question is, how serious is Dwayne The Rock Johnson and everybody else who's involved right now with the XFL? How serious are they in making this a legitimate league that people will actually watch and go to? Because even when the XFL was playing, when it first came back, there wasn't, attendance was always low. And that was a very I think, surprising to a lot of people that attendance was low, even though they were making pretty decent amount of money. So all in all, getting a partnership with the CFL, I think, is more beneficial to the XFL than the CFL. But if the CFL can start playing some games in the United States against XFL teams down the road, that might help to not only promote the XFL, but certainly have people take more notice of CFL games as well.
I like that answer. I like that answer coming from an American. It's time. It's 7:46. We have Dave Campbell waiting in the waiting room. Let's introduce the man behind the Elks CFL Twitter coverage, the one who's everywhere in terms of the Elks Twitter. The green and yellow room, which is amazing. Thank you, Dave, for coming on. How's it going today?
Boy, professional broadcaster here mutes his mic going into a show. Sorry about that, boys. Yeah, I'm good. How are you guys doing? Thanks for having me here.
Oh, thank you. It's a pleasure having you on. I know it's probably been a busy couple of weeks for you with the training camps getting going and getting back into the groove of things.
I think that's just it. It's just nice. I mean, I think walking into the stadium the first time on July 11th, it was you had the goosebumps and kind of had the welling up of emotions too. It's been a long time since we have seen CFL football, and honestly, there's moments over the last 20 months, especially after the season got canceled in 2020 last August, where I wondered, are we ever gonna see this site again? And that's looking upon a football field on the brick field at Commonwealth Stadium, and I'm sure a lot of people said the same thing. So it was just it was a surreal, awesome moment, and it's just nice that we're kind of in the groove again. Like training camp's getting monotonous, and I'm glad it's half over, and the players are more happy it's half over. But it's just nice to have CFL football back again.
Yeah. I mean, me and Frankie and I, we were kind of debating on what we were going to do if the CFL didn't happen this year. So it's nice. He's been at Frankie has been a soldier. He's been at every Red Blacks practice since the start. Like, I give him full credit on that. He's spending out days in the sun. But, a lot of Red Blacks connection with the Elk.
So, yep, no question.
So I have two players that I'm interested in seeing how they've gone so far this year. Sir Vincent Rogers and Jonathan Rose. How have those two players been so far in camp?
Well, we'll start with Sir V, and he started camp as the left tackle. Then about midway through last week, he was, just on the sidelines, not doing very much. Obviously, there's some sort of issue there. Not enough that he isn't, that would prevent him from being on the field, but he's not doing much. But, he looked good in the early going. He really did. Didn't look like he was away for 2 years. And remember, this is longer for him than it is for anyone else. It's like 25, 26 months for Servi, because he tore his bicep the first week of training camp, just a couple days before Edmonton was supposed to play their first preseason game. So it's been a long wait for him. Jonathan Rose, first of all, he's always smiling, infectious personality, positive attitude. And for himself as well. I mean, when you have spinal fusion surgery, he basically broke his back. And there was people thinking he would never play again. But he's come in playing the field corner and has looked good. There was one day where he, looked like he might have had some sort of lower body injury, shook it off. And he's been a big feature in that secondary. So it's been a lot of fun to see Jonathan Rose. The ball skills are great. The athleticism is great. He's long. He's a nuisance. And, he plays that wide corner, like I mentioned. And it's funny, I asked him, I said, there's this myth that if you're on the wide corner, it's going to be a boring trip for you. It's just going to be boring. You only have 4 or 5 plays. And he says, yeah, but if it's only 4 or 5 plays, those 4 or 5 plays could really affect the ball game. And I think Jonathan Rose is a game changer.
Yeah, Jonathan Rose was one of my favorite players when he was with Ottawa. Disappointed to see him go, but I'm excited to see him rock the green and yellow. The new breaking news coming out of Edmonton in the last 48 hours. What can you tell us about the Derek Dennis situation, if anything at all, with what's going on there?
It's a little strange, and Derek is a good guy. I had a chance to talk to him, but he's when things bother him, he lets you know. So, we gotta go back to January. He signed a contract, and then after that, they signed Sir Vincent Rogers. They signed, before camp, they signed Tommy Draheim, even though he retired. So they signed a whole bunch of tackles. And Derek Dennis was in that mix as well. And I think, you know what? You could have made him the favorite to start at left tackle. But we're talking 2 weeks before camp, or pretty close to that. He posted a message on Twitter saying, you know what? I'm not going to play this year. I got family obligations. Doesn't make sense for me to go up north and play. And I'm not retiring, but I'm not going to play. I hope to come back next year. And he said, small chance I'll come back next year. But he's on the retired list. That's where he ended up. So he had to agree to that, I'm sure. So then when he tweets out on Tuesday and says, what he said about, I wish I never signed the contract. I mean, I'm like, okay, why would you say that? So It's really hard to figure where his mindset's at. It sounds like perhaps there might be a team that is interested in him, or he's interested to going somewhere else. And maybe it has something to do with the border restrictions perhaps easing. I don't know what his fully vaccinated, if he is fully vaccinated, because eventually the border is going to lift, and maybe he wants to come back. I don't know. Like, I'm sitting here trying to rationalize this, but we have to remember one thing. He is retired, and if you're on the retired list, that doesn't mean you're free and clear. You are still under. So the Elks basically own his rights for the duration of the contract. He signed a 2-year deal. So the Elks, if they choose, can own his rights until the end of that contract. That's why when you see pending free agent lists, you see retired players on that list, because their contracts are due to expire. So it sounds like he wants an opportunity somewhere else. But why would Brock Sunderland, the general manager of the Elks, fulfill this if that's what he's asking for is a trade? And I know Dave Naylor of TSN, he reported that perhaps that's what he wants, is a trade or a release so he can go elsewhere, when you said a month ago you weren't playing this year. So it doesn't make a lot of sense. It's very inconsistent, and I would like to know where the middle is here, because it seems very strange to me that all of a sudden he has this about face. I want to come back and play, but I don't want to play for the Elks. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
Right. So one thing that keeps being brought up is Jamie Elizondo. He left Ottawa, felt like weeks before the start of training camp. I feel like he left Ottawa like 2-3 weeks before the starting training camp, and then he went to the XFL, or
I believe he was the offensive coordinator for the Tampa Bay Vipers under Mark Trestman. That's how I remember, because I remember when they played the Guardians. That was the first game of the XFL when it came back, and I was there, so I remember that. That's why when I saw earlier that that's who the head coach is now, I was like, wait, I've heard that name before.
Yeah. So a lot of people are like, okay, well, where does Jamie Elizondo fit? Because he basically just quit. Coaches have that ability to resign from their position. Players don't really have that option. So, do you know if how the coach, like how he feels, or what's his stance on it, or is he kind of keeping a tight lip on it?
Well, he hasn't brought it up, and I think we know why he left. And we have to look back to what happened earlier in that offseason. Definitely was a very, very harsh move from Elizondo. I'll never forget the press release that I saw from the Red Blacks PR. Elizondo leaves. It wasn't very kind to Elizondo, and clearly you felt that was the organization's feeling, is that he bolted on him. Before that, there was openings in, where was it? Saskatchewan. I believe there was another opening. It might have been the BC Lions as well, perhaps, but definitely Saskatchewan. And he wanted to go, and Marcel Desjardins, the GM, said no. So, that kind of rankled him a bit. I know Brock Sunderland says if he was able to talk to Elizondo, and at the time he wasn't. So this goes way back into December of 2019. He said if he was available, we would have definitely have asked him to come aboard even before Scott Milanovich, but of course that wasn't the case. So, it was a harsh move. I don't necessarily maybe agree with it, the timing, but I do understand his feeling. And, I don't know. It's I understand Marcel Desjardins' feelings about it. I mean, Jamie Elizondo is an excellent offensive coordinator who is in line to be a head coach one day. But to deny a person a chance to even interview is really tough. I mean, I would probably be upset about that as well. So, but no, it hasn't been brought up. It hasn't been brought up at all. Scott Milanovich, when he left the Edmonton organization to go to the Indianapolis Colts, he called Jamie Elizondo and said, "I think you should be waiting by the phone because I think Brock Sunderland's going to call you." And at that point, Elizondo was basically feeling he was never going to work in football again. So I think this is a chance for him to just get back and do what he loves, be a head coach finally, and I think to turn the page. And I think he has definitely turned the page because he doesn't even bring it up.
I think it's fair that he doesn't bring it up. I mean, considering the situation, one thing that stands out to me is that when you go back to the last season, obviously that happened. You look at Edmonton; they lost in the semifinal or the East final, and now you go into many months later. From 2019 end of that season to now 2021. I mean, I guess the question is really how much different really is this Edmonton team, other than the fact that obviously they're now called the Elks. Like how much different does it look like that this team is compared to 2019?
Well, I think there is a lot of turnover in some respects. I mean, they have a new head coach. Jason Moss was the head coach at the end of 2019. It's Jamie Elizondo now. You have some veterans that were on this team that are no longer on the team. Calvin McCarty, Ryan King, Mondo Sewell along that D line. He's gone. But, there is some continuity, especially on that offense. You look at the offensive line, and there's a lot of continuity there. Picking up Darrell Walker was huge. And then after that, picking up Greg Ellingson, re-signing him was also huge. You got Armonte Edwards. Kenny Stafford's in the mix. You got some good Canadian receivers. Their running back stable with James Wilder Jr. and Terry Williams is strong. I think the question comes defensively because you do lose Sewell. That's a big loss along that D line. But you still have Mike Moore, Jake Seresna, who's got some Ottawa ties, and they're very stout. And then I think the biggest maybe one of the best stories in training camp is you got Canadian bookends on defensive end with Kwaku Boateng and Matthew Betts. So talked about the secondary. The linebacking core is interesting just because it's a little raw, even though there's some talent there. But yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of turnover with this team, but I think there's enough leadership, and there's leadership from 19 with Trevor Harris and Ellingson and some players there, and then there's some leadership from the 2015 Grey Cup team with Darrell Walker and Kenny Stafford and Aaron Grimes, and then there's some new leadership that Jonathan Rose, for example, and Jonathan Mincy and players like that. So I think it's a combination of there's a lot of new with some familiarity with the team. Definitely without any preseason games, it's going to be a very quick process to have everything gel, and it won't gel on August 7th at home against the Ottawa Red Blacks. But, that's going to be interesting is who's going to be able to overcome their mistakes the most. Because I think we're in line to see some really sloppy football that could lead to really exciting plays on the field. I think that's what we're going to see.
That's really interesting because, I remember this past NFL season, no preseason games, just kind of jumped right into it. I mean, most teams had, I think, maybe one or two scrimmages, and then we saw the first 3, 4, or 5 weeks of the season, a lot of sloppy play. And you look at some teams that maybe had a new head coach, like I would use the New York Giants when they had Joe Judge. It was tough at first to kind of get things rolling because you didn't have that ability. So again, obviously, without having preseason games, I do agree with you, Dave, that it is going to be more sloppy football, but it could lead to a lot of very exciting plays, which actually could benefit the CFL when it comes to, saying we're back and everything like that. So I think that's a very good point. It'll be interesting to see how sloppy these teams are. And I think Not saying that like the first couple of games are going to define the entire season, but I would be curious to know, especially when we get to the later part of the year, how big were those early games when teams were really struggling and teams have opportunities to really take advantage of each other without much practice, without much, just regular game time prior to it.
You go back to the week 1 in the NFL season. That was one of the most wild weeks I've ever seen in my life. I mean, there was so many crazy things that happened, and you're right. It could, I wasn't complaining that week about no preseason NFL games. Preseason, I like preseason, but it's hard to watch. After a while, it is what it is. It's just a lot of mistake-filled games, and there's some fun to it, but there also I feel bad for the younger players because I think when you look at the Elks, for example, they're an example of a veteran team that if you look at their roster, they're pretty set at most positions. But it's, who's going to be the contributors on special teams? Who's going to be the number 2 in certain positions? And without a preseason game and you're only left with one scrimmage, which hasn't happened yet, it'll happen Sunday for the Elks. It's tough. And they've already had to let go 11 players because of roster rules this year in training camp, where before you could keep 100 players for 3 weeks and play 2 preseason games. So, yeah, I think if you're a veteran team like the Elks, it might play into your favor a bit better just because you're familiar more with concepts, you're familiar with each other. I think the key for the Elks offensively is the relationship Trevor Harris has with Jamie Elizondo. When you look at the Red Blacks, you have that with Matt Nichols and Paul LaPolice. That will be interesting to see what happens. Matt Nichols has one heck of a job here to bring everyone together. And I do think Matt is a good leader. I've followed him since 2010 when he arrived in Edmonton. And then he was traded in 2015 to the Bombers. But that's interesting because they're a young team. Yeah. Veteran quarterback, veteran coach. They have a great relationship. How does that spread out? Where Trevor Harris doesn't have a lot of teaching to do with this offense, right? So I think that's key. The veteran-laden teams with a lot of continuity might benefit the best out of the gate here.
Yeah, I agree. It's going to be interesting. I mean, again, we open up the season against the Elks. I do have a question. Is the Elk logo actually staying at midfield? Is that
that big logo with the reveal at the reveal?
Is that something they're keeping?
No, they can't do it.
What?
One reason is advertising. If they kept that logo, then their advertisers would be very upset because there's no space for them. And I do believe, secondly, there are some league bylaws or league rules against, or that govern logo and the size of logo. So it was an epic logo. I mean, everyone loved it. Most people loved it. It took my breath away. But I remember asking a member of the Elks management, and I said, "Are they keeping that logo?" And he says, "Oh, that logo is great, but I don't think it's staying." So, and I tweeted out a picture today. The Elks logo is actually the one they will use is actually at midfield now, and it's much smaller.
Well, yeah, unfortunately, because when I saw that when they released it, I'm like, "That's amazing, keep it." But I'm glad they're keeping a logo at midfield. I was worried that they might not do the whole logo thing this year, but
yeah, they're doing it, and it looks pretty spiffy. I'll tell you.
I think just the whole rebrand, with the Elks, I think it looks phenomenal. I think they did a really, really good job with it, and I think a lot of people are going to, as they see it, they're going to really enjoy it as well.
Yeah, it's hard to make this type of change in a pandemic, coming off a year when you didn't play. When you lost, they lost $7.1 million. Benefit of being a community-owned team is you actually have to release your numbers. So $7.1 million is what they lost.
Right.
And this is a big change, but it's going to be minimal change in year one. Like the jersey setup will be the exact same.
Right.
And if you remember before the old name, that right there, that'll be replaced by Edmonton.
Okay.
So that's the biggest change. I don't know where the double E logo will end up on the jersey. I know there's talk about a third jersey mock-up at some point. I don't know if we're going to see it this year, but the double E might appear on a helmet again. But it's going to be, and they modified the Elks logo, which I think when it first came out, I know for me, I wasn't really enamored with it, and now I've seen it in camp, and they've tweaked it, and it's a lot more identifiable, and it's got the E as well. The antlers form an E. So
yeah.
But, Chris Presson, the president and CEO, said this is going to take years to complete because you don't know where the old name's everywhere. It's still in the stadium a lot. Like the old hashtag is there. The old name is around. People are going to have to be patient because this changeover is going to take a long time to complete, and it's expensive. I mean, the projection was about $1 million, roughly, and to do it in a pandemic is tough. So, but they got the name, they got the logo, they got the helmet. The merchandising has gone gangbusters. It's been great. It's so popular. So they're off to a good start.
That's good to hear.
I feel like they've done, I don't know, Shane, if you would agree, but I feel like personally Edmonton did a better job, at least rebranding kind of on the spot than what the Washington football team did. I mean, that's just the way I look at it because with the Washington football team, it was just kind of like they just threw together a logo. They did all this, and very similar to Edmonton, they really just kept the jerseys except it just says Washington on it. It just says a W. And same thing with Edmonton. Washington did say it's going to take several years, or at least maybe until 2022, before they really are able to get to rebranding it completely. And it's going to cost them a pretty penny just to do it because of circumstances. So I think that's when I see what Edmonton did, I feel like in some regards they actually did a better job than what the Washington football team did with their rebrand, so to speak.
I think they were all in and committed to doing it. I know there was some hesitation within the organization, especially at the board of director level. There was a lot of debate, but Chris Presson really led the charge here. And he said, if we don't change this, we're always going to change this name. We're always going to have a problem. And the line he used before the official retirement of the name Eskimos is he said, it's like we put our finger in one hole and three show up, right? So you just can't win the battle, and at some point you got to realize what's best for your organization, and changing the name was the right move. It was an emotional day. I was pretty emotional about it. I mean, I shed a tear that day, but when the Elks name was unveiled, I shed a tear too. So, it's a combination of honoring your past and going forward.
Right.
And I think I agree with you. I think the Elks did a good job where I think honestly, Washington's just trying to delay this as long as they can. Because we're not talking about the same numbers here. I mean, yeah, they lost some money, I'm sure, but I mean, their TV contract is so ridiculously
sponsorships as well.
Yeah.
Just be able to keep them. They're fine. Like, it's not like they, because it's a major difference for people who are from the United States. What people don't realize is that the money, in the CFL is a lot different than the money you see in the National Football League. It's very different. So $1 million is a lot of money in the CFL. So when you said that, I was like, wow, that's a lot of money just to get the rebranding going. And I'm sure, because I'm speaking, for Americans, when they see a rebrand, they say, oh, it costs only $1 million. They look and say, what exactly is the issue? Well, you have to look at the logistics of everything, and obviously a different country altogether, and different, different
when 2/3 of your revenue is through gate revenue, and you didn't have it last year, and you're going to have it this year, but not to maybe the level you'd like in every center, in every city in the CFL. Yeah, it does matter. And what's the TV contract for each team? Like something like $260 million before even before you sell one ticket, right? And that's incredible.
You're already in the NFL. You're already in a good position, regardless if you don't have a single fan that shows up to a game.
Exactly. Even if you're the Green Bay Packers who lost money for the first time in 20 years, they're going to be okay because fans are going to be back this year.
Most of the season, no fans. Everybody was doing financially, everybody was doing fine. Yeah, they lost money, but still.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, different scenario in both leagues. CFL, I mean, it was, what do you hear? I mean, Dan Ralph of the Canadian Press says $50 to $80 million, I believe, Dan, and I believe the number's accurate. So this year they're going to lose money again, but it's just how can you, stave off the losses? And we'll see. Like, I think there is a groundswell of excitement for this league. But we'll see if they come. I mean, we'll see if COVID has maybe given people sober second thought about going to a live sporting event, or maybe the excitement is there that we're going to see 35, 40,000 at Commonwealth Stadium on August 7th. That would be something.
Well, I know in Ottawa, I've talked to plenty of Red Blacks fans, and they're like, honestly, if I can go, I'm going for their home opener at the end of the month against BC.
That's good.
You haven't had a live sporting event since March of 2020. You haven't had CFL football for Ottawa since October 2019. Like,
right.
At this point, people are like, I just want to go experience a game day again. So I feel like attendance across the league might actually be better than people expect it to be.
And if you look at also, like, if it showed anything, look at how fans reacted to being allowed to go see the Montreal Canadiens in the Stanley Cup Finals this whole playoff year. Look at that. If once they set a limit to how many fans, that limit went, and then you had many people outside the arena. If they were allowed to fill this arena, they would have done it. They would have done it. So I feel like just having the ability to have fans be able to come back is a phenomenal thing. And I think that a lot of people, not everybody, but I think a lot of people will definitely show up. They will be there, and they will be there as much as possible because it's given us time to really reflect on the things that we pretty much for the most part take for granted, like going to sporting events.
I like it. Let's get it done. Come on, people.
Well, thank you, Dave, for coming on. I know we stayed a little bit longer than expected, but we definitely appreciate you coming on. And maybe we can get a mid-season kind of wrap up on how the Elks are doing from your vantage point.
Absolutely, because that won't be long. Once we kick off, midpoint will come real fast. So absolutely, hit me up and I'll be back.
All right, thank you, Dave, for coming on, and it was a pleasure.
Thank you very much, guys. Appreciate it.
Well, there was Dave Campbell, the voice of one of the color analysts for Shed or 360 Shed out in Edmonton, covering your Edmonton Elks. Ran a little bit longer than expected, about 12 minutes, but hey, CFL football is back, so we really don't care. But we have some other exciting news in sports. I know we all love the CFL, but tomorrow, Wednesday night, 8 o'clock Eastern, the Seattle Kraken will pick their first NHL player from, I'm assuming it's going to go in alphabetical order. So
It is not. It is actually not, because the Devils are picked. The Devils are 10th on the order, apparently.
I haven't seen them. I don't know
why it's not in alphabetical order. You would think that would make sense, but I don't even know if they randomized this. I have no idea. I'd have to double check on the order.
I know there was a leak of them testing out the board out in Seattle. Picking Wayne Gretzky, Mario Lemieux, like they were just going all in. This team was going to go win the cup year one. They were trying to outdo Vegas. But either way, at 8 o'clock, we will have an official NHL player part of the Seattle Kraken. And I can only speak for myself, but does it not feel like the last year has gone so slow, or has gone so quick, and the last week has just been painfully slow?
100%. If you look at when we got to the day a couple days ago, where it was all about you had to get your list in by 5 o'clock. It felt like it was moving at a snail's pace. Like everybody was taking forever to get stuff done, and everybody's scrambling. And then, like you said, with obviously the shortened NHL season, 52 games, it went by like that. We didn't even have time to really process everything. It just went by so quickly. And now we're into late July, and we're talking about the expansion draft, and we're at this time tomorrow, we're going to be looking at it. Right. We're gonna know who's gonna be the first guy to go in Seattle, and that's gonna be an interesting thing. And I mean, there are some teams that are gonna lose a really, really quality player, and there's some other teams out there that, honestly, they're not gonna lose somebody that's gonna massively put them in a difficult position. But I'm curious to know just what Ron Francis, the GM of the Seattle Kraken, I'm curious to know how he wants to do this. Does he want to do it Vegas style, where they just try to put the best team on the ice right away? Or do they try to build this organically, start from the ground up and work their way? And you have a very interesting situation, particularly at the goaltending position.
There's 4 players just 4 players that I'm interested to see what happens with in this draft. Carey Price, because that's huge. He's expected to miss like 10 plus months with a hip and a knee injury. That's reported. Gabriel Landeskog.
UFA.
Tarasenko.
Yep.
And some guy who's never been mentioned, Dougie Hamilton, the number 1 defenseman available this UFA season, unprotected by
Carolina.
He's, I believe, 28 years old. He is in line for an 8-year deal.
Yep.
You know, arguably could have been snubbed. Was a snub last year, snub this year for Norris. Like, you have that argument where, like, is he a top 5 defenseman? Those are 4 players. I'm also interested to see what happens in Boston. Does Hall, Krejci, Hall, like, what happens with those guys? So
it's a good point.
There's so many storylines. There are so many storylines heading in.
There's way more storylines than what we had in Vegas. Way more.
100%.
Because in Vegas, because people don't remember this, when we talked about the Vegas expansion draft, we knew for the most part who was going. There wasn't much debate.
Names. There wasn't that many big names.
We knew Fleury was going. We knew Fleury was going to get picked up. There was no hesitation about that.
Yeah, you had Fleury, you had James Neal, David Perron. Those guys kind of made sense.
Right.
But you have a chance to get a Hall of Fame goaltender in Carey Price. You have a chance to get, arguably, when healthy, one of the best goal scorers in the league in Tarasenko. You have Gabriel Landeskog, who's been a captain for many years and is right now in the prime of his career. And could easily be, without Tarasenko, he could easily be your top left winger. 100%.
Right away.
So, you have multiple choices.
Yes.
And who I don't think and we're talking about goaltenders. Who I think doesn't get enough recognition? Peter Mrazek in Carolina. Ron Francis brought him into Carolina. Ron Francis made him the number 1 in Carolina.
He did.
I know people are talking about Drieger. Personally, I don't think. Why are we giving a goalie who's played 38 career NHL games entering his age 27 season $3.5 million?
It's only for 3 years, so it's not like they're
still. In what world does a player with 38 games experience get $3.5 million?
The only reason I'm not trying to defend it, I'm trying to just try to make it make more sense. The way that I look at it is simply this: there is a possibility that Ron Francis has contacted a handful of players that could very well potentially be picked up by Seattle, and they spoke to their camps and said, you know what, I really honestly am not going to be, especially UFAs, more or less UFAs, and said, I'm not feeling it 100%. There's some other teams that are calling as well that are a little bit more enticing. So, we just heard today that Gabriel Landeskog and his camp spoke directly with Ron Francis earlier today, and they're gauging the interest, but it doesn't, I don't think that Gabriel Landeskog will end up in Seattle because because you have to look at it this way. A contract has to be signed within the next 24 hours if you're going to reveal this guy. Because, there's got to be 1 or 2 guys that you're revealing. And probably Chris Driedger is going to be one of them.
I hope not. Because here's my thing.
No, but that's what I'm saying.
Why not
considering
wait for free agency?
Yeah.
And this is my thing with how I look at it. Why would you ever pick a UFA? You have every chance to talk to them. Why not have a side deal? There's nothing saying, oh yeah, I'm going to sign with you on July 28th at 12:01.
Right.
So imagine being Ron Francis and going to Landeskog, being like, hey, we want you. This is the offer we're going to take. Sign it July 28th.
Right.
And they go in and pick Donskoy.
Right.
They go talk to Hamilton. They're like, oh yeah, do this. They pick up Nato Niederreiter.
Seattle is definitely, from what I've been told, Seattle is 100% in on Dougie Hamilton. They're willing, they're ready to
Francis was the one who brought him out.
Well, that's what I'm saying. When you look at it with Ronnie Francis, there's going to be some picks that he makes that have to do with connection-wise. So like you mentioned, Dougie Hamilton, Peter Mrazek does make sense because, like you just said, he brought him in. So he knows him. But he may look at Peter Mrazek and say, is this the guy that I want to be my starter? Considering that he lost his job to Nedeljkovic. No, is that
Nedeljkovic?
Nedeljkovic.
The one that sounds Russian and Czech, but he's actually American?
Yeah, he's American, right? Exactly. Well, I mean, it's like Connor Hellebuck. Hellebuck doesn't sound American.
That sounds more American than
all right,
Nedeljkovic.
It's close. It's close. But
Hellebuck,
still, I mean...
Nedeljkovic.
Yeah. I mean, look, I think there's about 3 different plans that Ron Francis has for this expansion draft. I think there's 3 different plans. And I think he's going to look at it and say, okay, look, because again, what people have to remember is this. At any second of this draft, there is going to be possibly a trade. There is a very good chance that there are teams that are going to be asking for trades. Maybe not necessarily for players that Seattle takes, but possibly for players that other teams have. So I'll use this as an example. We just heard today that apparently the Devils are definitely shopping PK Subban. They're looking for a partner, which also tells me that most likely Subban will not be taken by Seattle. Because if they're looking to trade him and trying to get something for him, maybe they already spoke to Seattle and maybe Ron Francis said, we're probably not taking Subban. So you can move forward with that. I mean, that's a possibility. The best case, I mean, look, if he gets taken by Seattle, that's great. That's $9 million more that we have in the bank to do whatever the hell we want with it, which is not great because then you're $25 million under the cap floor. And I don't know how the hell we're going to get $25 million on the cap floor, even with extensions.
Could I interest you into an Evgeny Dadonov?
It's a possibility. It's a possibility. We have a lot of, look, the Devils are one of those teams, like, we have a lot to offer a lot of teams. And I expect us to be pretty busy in the offseason.
How the hell does Detroit have $44 million in cap space?
Maybe because the only person they pay is Dylan Larkin.
I didn't realize how much cap space they actually had.
Mind you, this is with Mark Stahl still on the team, which is pretty remarkable if you ask me. Because I'm pretty sure Mark Stahl's contract wasn't great either. But look, I mean...
Oh, no, yeah, Mark Stahl's a UFA.
Oh, he's a UFA. All right, well, that might be part of the reason that his contract went off the boards and all of a sudden they jacked it up. But, I mean, honestly, you mentioned Carey Price. Carey Price by far is the most interesting storyline of anything that we have. Because it's really about, okay, does Seattle want to go down the route of, let's take him, we can use him to market ourselves and go from there, and maybe we can compete right away? It's possible. Do we draft? Do we take him and force Montreal to trade us something for him, trading assets, draft picks maybe? Or do we do we draft him and then do this? Sell him to the highest bidder. So if somebody else...
Only if he waives his no-move clause.
Well, he has to. Well, that's true. He has to move his no movement clause. But another goalie that I feel like nobody's talking about, and I get it because he's kind of injury prone, but I want to give him credit, is Ben Bishop. Ben Bishop didn't have to waive his no movement clause. He didn't. He could have just said no, but he actually was incredibly selfless of himself to be like.
But I saw reports that he might not even play next year. Like his career could be over.
Well, that's another point. He might be looking at, for all we know, he might be just looking like, look, Seattle, if you take me, it's not that I don't want to play for you guys. It's just that I may not physically be able to play.
You know who I'm not surprised? Like I'm surprised this isn't being talked about. Holtby. 1 year left.
It wasn't that long ago that he won the Stanley Cup. So
yeah, and he has like 1 year left. I think he's making like 6 or 6.5.
It's not too bad. For a goaltender.
He's making He's making 4.3 mil this year in his cap hit. He has 1 year left. Like, why? If I'm Seattle, why wouldn't I take a cup winner?
And also this, I think it's something else to mention as well. There's a report out there that apparently Seattle is pretty much certain that they're going to take about 5 goaltenders in this draft and then trade 2 of them for assets. Which... my question is, who would be the 2 goal? Like, I feel like I look at it like I wouldn't be surprised if they drafted like Holtby and then tried to move him, even though I think Holtby could still be a very solid goaltender, and that could be something. But it's kind of a funny thing. It's a really funny thing to see how it is. The one thing that obviously is really annoying for me personally is just the fact that Vegas doesn't have to worry about this at all. That they can just get to sit there and watch us all get upset.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of goaltenders, if I had to pick 5 goaltenders if I was Seattle, if I had to pick 5 goaltenders, Price, Holtby, Drieger, Vanek, and Decord.
What about this is just me spitballing here. I know he's past his prime, but what about Jonathan Quick?
No.
And I'm saying
talking about goaltenders to move assets for, I don't see Quick having much value anymore.
Well, he might be. I mean, there's always a possibility that they could draft him, and then LA wants him back, and then they just get assets.
Trade him back.
You can't trade him back?
No. If you pick someone, you're not allowed to trade him back. It's cap circumvention.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, you're right. Because I remember, I think it was David Schlemko got drafted by Vegas, and I believe he was I forgot where he was at the time, but he got drafted by Vegas and immediately was moved to Montreal.
Yeah, and then Ottawa wanted to do that with Mathot, but they moved him to Dallas, and then apparently Dallas' asking price was like a first, a second, and a prospect. And I'm like,
and that's the thing also with Seattle. Seattle apparently some of these asking prices that I've been hearing are
like a first and a third.
Are unrealistic to me. I'm like, here's the thing. If you draft like let's say Chris Drieger, right? Let's say you draft him, and then somebody wants him. And then you go, okay, we want a first, a second, and a prospect. It's like, are you smoking or something? Like, do you not know how this works?
Hey, look at Vegas fleeced Florida out of Riley and Marchessault.
Oh yeah, don't even get me started with how much Vegas fleeced the crap out of the Florida Panthers. I mean,
that's the thing.
I'm surprised, by the way, Bobrovsky was left. He should have been the one left unprotected.
He has a no move clause. He had to waive it. He's not going to waive it. Why would he waive it?
Do you think there's a possibility that they asked? I bet they asked him.
I don't think they did. I feel like they assumed that they would lose. They were going to lose Drieger no matter what.
Well, they do have. Obviously, they have Spencer Knight. So I mean,
I think that's the thing is that they're going to win with a Bobrovsky Knight pairing next year anyway. So it doesn't really matter.
No, that's a good point. And then you also mentioned the situation with David Krejci and Taylor Hall out of Boston. I'm going to be honest, I'm pretty sure it's tempting. I'm pretty sure with Taylor Hall there. Look, Taylor Hall is not the main guy on a team. He said it himself publicly. He said, when I was in New Jersey and Edmonton and even Buffalo, I had to be the guy. And it's like, well, you want to get paid like you want to be the guy, but you don't want to be the guy. Like, do you understand?
To be fair, it's kind of hard to be the guy as a winger when your centers are garbage.
I mean, was Nico Hischier garbage?
Yes, technically.
I mean, Taylor Hall publicly stated that he wouldn't have won the Hart Trophy if it wasn't for Nico.
No, but I'm just saying that like if you look at Nico Hischier's like first 3 years, his ELC years, people were considering him a bust, and that's with Taylor Hall.
I feel like some still are for not legitimate reasons, but
Probably.
He was hurt most of this year.
People thought Hedman was a bust. Up until he was like 25, people were saying Hedman was a bust.
Right.
People thought Ekblad was a bust. So people are stupid. They throw this stuff around all the time. But if you actually look at it, he barely played this season with Kruger barely played Hall and Eichel together.
Yeah.
The coach.
Well, I mean, also to be fair, Eichel got hurt very early in the year. So
yeah, he played like 20 games max. But
I thought he only played like 10.
Maybe
I could have sworn it was like 10 or something. It wasn't a lot. I'll tell you that.
But like you also look at in Edmonton, he had like a handful of games a season with McDavid, and McDavid got hurt his rookie year. It's the same thing with Yakupov. Yakupov had like a handful of games, and they're like sayonara, even though he was playing well with McDavid.
Yeah, but you brought this up. You talk about Taylor Hall's played with a lot of garbage centers. Let's be honest. What center could Seattle get that could actually be beneficial to someone like Taylor Hall? I mean, you can't pick both Hall and Krejci. You can't pick them both.
But you could always sign one of them.
That's true. That's a good point.
I want to know if Cap Friendly has the exposure. Because, like, I'm trying to think of who's actually exposed center-wise.
That's a good point.
But it's, I don't know. Tomorrow's going to be awesome. Tomorrow night is going to be fantastic. We're going to have fun.
I'm not worried. I have
Ottawa's losing. Dadenoff, Tierney, Josh Brown.
Shane and I are fans of teams that honestly don't have a whole lot to offer anybody.
No, we're good.
It's like you just
here, though, we got a little bit of a problem.
Right, but fortunately, we don't have an expansion draft after this one coming up anytime soon.
True.
So we're good.
Who knows? Maybe in like 3 years, Quebec City finally gets a team.
Oh, that would be. Oh, don't even get me started if Quebec comes back, man. It's just they come back. Yeah. Well, we'll see what happens.
But we've hit the hour mark, guys. Everyone who's joined in, it's been a pleasure. Obviously, Neil, thank you for coming on. It was great having you. You can check him out at the NVP show is his Twitter handle. Devil State for his Devil State of Mind podcast, covering the New Jersey Devils. Yep. Frankie should be back here next week. We're going to be actually moving our episodes from Tuesday to Monday. So we'll have our Monday episode. It's just easier for everyone. So that's new. But if you are an expansion draft fan, come out, check us out on the Hockey Podcast Network tomorrow, because we are doing a little bit of a live reaction that I totally forgot about up until this morning.
Wow. So I think you thought it was for the NHL draft, right? Which is by the way, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, the NHL draft is on Friday.
Round 1 is Friday.
Right. Friday is the NHL draft. Tomorrow, Wednesday, is the expansion draft. And
then next week, next week, tomorrow is free agency.
And also, for any American fans, this is the first hockey-based thing that ESPN is involved in.
ESPN, baby.
So we get to see some buttes on ESPN tomorrow. That'll be fun.
Anyways, guys, thank you all for joining us. We will catch you back here next week with a brand new episode of the 13th Man Sports Live Show. Stay safe, enjoy the weekend, and enjoy the sports. We'll catch you later.